You know, and it happens to experienced farmers all the time too. It's not just us. You know, I was talking to that Coyote, the one that raises chickens and stuff. And
Coyote Creek.
Yeah, Coyote Creek. And he's telling me about some ice storm. And he went out there and he had all these frozen chickens. 4-H, yes, death is a big deal. I mean, I faced so much death when I started this thing. And, you know, now I've got a little bit more, probably more positive about it. Definitely, you know, network as much as you can. 4-H is open to adults, and they have a lot of great resources. And, you know, they're kind of contaminated with Dow and DuPont, and that whole county extension agent thing is a little bit scary, but they do have a lot of good stuff to be gained from it. Neighbors, by God, you know, Austin here has that whole backyard chicken thing going on. It's great. There's a lot of resources there. So definitely find people to talk to when things go bad. Some of the phases that you go through is the first thing you do is you figure out how to keep them alive. And you're like, wow, they're doing good. And then you figure out how to get them to breed and get the babies to stay alive. And then that's really great. And then the next thing you know, you have got a gazillion of them. And you're like, oh my God, you know, what am I going to do with all these goats, you know? We had some neighbors moved out and they were vegetarians, and they said, we'll get into goats. And they said, we'll get into, you know, milking goats. And they didn't realize, I guess they didn't have made the connection that milking goats means that the moms have to have babies on a regular basis, and then you have to get rid of the babies. And they had this population, they had goats everywhere, you know. They had to figure that, you know, so you have that experience. And then you'll get better at management. And that, you know, that could well take you quite a few years to go through that. It's kind of fun. I really like rabbits, and I'll get into a little bit more into rabbits why when we do chickens. That 8-cage rabbit hutch that I have, those cages are 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet per hut. You know, there's 8 of them. It's really not that much space. I get about 90 rabbits a year out of that. If our summers weren't so hot, I'd get a whole lot more. The rabbits don't breathe very well in the heat. That's a lot of meat, you know. That's you know, about 2 rabbits a week. For a family of 4, that's pretty dang good eating, you know, really. There's a real natural synergy with the rabbits. Every morning I go out and you know, everybody hates weeding in a garden. Believe me, it's a universal thing. But if you're going out and collecting free rabbit food, there's a difference. It's really amazing. I'm like, oh no, you grow a little bit more. I'll come back to you later. You know, I mean, I know where everything's growing, and I'm like, no, that grass is not tall enough yet. You know, I'm gonna give them some of this. So, and you'll start looking at your neighbor's lawn. Hey, this green bell, come out here with a scythe, and I can pick up, you know. Anyway, so they're great. And they eat stuff that really, you know, they would love to eat more of my kale, of course, but on the whole, they eat stuff that I don't eat, and it's a real natural synergy. Also, you know, as I was saying, when you process them, there's no refrigeration needed. Refrigeration is a big deal for those of you who've been looking off-grid. Like, what's your biggest power usage is refrigeration, usually. You know, and those refrigerators are real expensive. So it's not now with energy so cheap and everything's so available, but especially in third world countries where they're really promulgating. Again, this is another thing that's been studied heavily because they really recommend rabbits in a lot of these other developing nations because they're pretty easy, and they breed like rabbits. Now chickens. Chickens really, egg production is, you should think of chickens as egg production. I'm always amazed at how many people say, you should raise a whole bunch of chickens so you can eat meat and have chickens for meat. And it's actually, in a real homesteading situation, you actually very rarely eat chicken. You do every now and then when you get an old stew hen, but chickens are mostly for eggs. And the main reason why is, let's just do some math. 52 weeks in a year. If you want to have 1 week chicken on Sunday pot, was that Eisenhower? Everybody had a chicken on Sunday in the pot. You're going to need 52 chickens. And if you're going to have 52 chickens, you're going to need a flock of a certain size. You need actually 40 to 60 chickens to, you know, constantly have the breeding going on and the ones growing up and the whole process happening so that you have a chicken every week. And if you're going to have that many chickens, you are going to be buying chicken feed. It's really hard to come up with the feed that you need for that many chickens. I think it's a great interim strategy if you want to really fertilize a particular area. So, you know you're going to buy the feed, you're actually buying the feed for the fertility, you feed it to the chickens fertilize the area, you harvest the chickens, you know, as an interim thing, but you're very aware from the get-go that you're going to be feeding them. Predator protection, I bet here in the city people don't realize, you know, there is a ton of wildlife. The cities actually have a lot more wildlife in some areas, especially in the suburban areas, than out in the countryside, because there's so much food here, garbage and, you know, waste and stuff like that. But raccoons are so unbelievably intelligent. But as I said, everything loves chickens. Fire ants, snakes, you know, everything's wanting to get into stuff. What I recommend is if you're in a suburban backyard, 2 or 3 hens, give them a little house to live in. They'll be great. You can throw them your food scraps. They can forage around your yard. You really won't have to feed them that much, and they'll produce you some eggs. A chicken can lay about an egg a day. They're going to take off when it's too hot or when they need to molt, which is change all their feathers out, and they take off every now and then. But on the whole, you get pretty good, reliable egg production. They start laying in about 6 months, and they can realistically go for quite a few years. The big production houses only sell them after like a year or 2 because they've burned them out. You know, they totally abuse those chickens. But a good one that you got that's living a nice life in your backyard, they can lay for a good 5 or 10 years. It depends on how well they're taken care of. And you really don't need a lot for them. You wouldn't really have to buy them. In our situation where we've got the couple of acres on the upper area where they can run around, we've got a flock of about 12, and I really don't feed them much at all. Like right now, this time of year, there's so many bugs and so many greens and so much, they really turn their nose up if I give them chicken feed. Yeah, I did help them out. You know, we had a severe drought in August or like in January when there's absolutely nothing out there. Yeah, I throw out a little bit of feed, you know, food scraps or something. But they also don't need a tremendous amount. But think of chickens more for eggs rather than for meat. And I would recommend you look at rabbits for meat. Now, the rooster issue, my recommendation, if you get a rooster that crows in the middle of the night, you eat that one. That's my recommendation. But if you've got a flock of 10 or 12, a rooster really does, those guys really work. They do a good job. They don't eat that much. They don't eat nearly as much as the hens. And they, by God, they really do. They really do. I have a neighbor of mine that he showed me this rooster, and the rooster had gone after a coyote and had patches of coyote fur and skin on his sharp talons. He had run off a coyote. I couldn't believe that. So anyway, that I won't promise that of all roosters, but he was also illegally raising fighting cocks. So he had some really good roosters. But, you know, if you're going to get into chickens, by the way, that probably is the most profitable angle on it, is the illegal fighting cocks. Unfortunately. So,
just put food on the table.
I like a free-range system. It took us a lot of years to get to this, mainly because I just can't do it, getting there to open and close that gate every night. Somebody will go in there and eat your chickens, and you lose them. And so we have all of ours, they roost up in a cedar tree. Now there's some more challenges with this method before you go, that's great. So we'll go on with it a little bit more. Roost up in a cedar tree. And we haven't got a gift of some of these hens who, by the time we got it, they were pretty old and pretty sedentary, I might say, for a chicken. You know, they lived in an easy life in a coop, and they never could get up in the tree. So we built them this. You can still collect the compost from them. The chickens at night, you know, they're still dropping stuff all night long. Just put some hay underneath there, and you've got yourself an organic compost pile happening. And as I said, fertility. Collect your fertility everywhere you can. So we built them this, and they sit on it, and then we just collect the manure from underneath it. You know, every couple months or something, it gets real gross. And, yeah. Pitchfork and put that on some plant that'll love it. And really they can produce on forage pretty well and produce eggs. I'm really enamored at the moment, talk about breeds, I'm really enamored at the moment with the brown leghorn. And it's mainly the reason I stumbled on the brown leghorn. this big comb and the wattle, I guess, I don't know all the technical names, that really helps them to dissipate heat, which is a real critical